Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 56th episode of our first run through House of Light on YouTube, playing as the archaeologist. So when I left off, I was trying to figure out whether or not I wanted to level any of these up. Now, part of this is going to be determined by whatever memories are generated. So I think the better thing for me to do right now would be to take the 12 seconds and see what Denzel produces. If he gets me something with Knock or Moth, that's a pretty good argument for leveling up Edict's Liminal. And if he doesn't do that, I should use the Shapt to create some Amethyst Ampules. Okay, Fear sort of throws me for a loop here. So I think with Fear, what we're going to do, we can take our Sharps, I can combine that with Hyksos and a Tryst, and we get we can level up Sharps. Now again, I wasn't originally going to do this, but the more I think about it, because I've already committed something to Skolakosophy with Pentiments and Precursors, this actually means that Sharps can move quite high, at minimum 3, but if they're going to be going into Hushery, then I should be leveling them even further. So in any case, and it's something that gets me edge. I mean, to a certain extent, this isn't the one that I want to be moving Heaven and Earth to be able to level up, because it gets me everything that Edict's Marshal does. But I do want the option, especially if it winds up being something that allows me to access other parts of the Tree of Wisdom. So we'll at least get that basic level down. Now that constrains a few of the options. So in this case, regardless of what Denzel gives me, we're not going to be able to use the Tryst for Edict's Liminal now, although I guess we would still be able to use the Shapt. So there is still some sense in talking to Denzel tonight. So what are realistically, what are the things that might be able to move up? So we can't level up Insects and Nectars because we don't have any Moon and Nectar now. Quenchings and Quellings would require Heart and Winter, so same argument there. Edict's Liminal has the potential because of the Shapt, so I'll want to keep at least one of those available. And then Lockworks and Clockworks. What was the story on that one? So 2. I mean, if effectively it's the same argument as the Shapt. I suppose the interesting part is that we do have the Faust here, so I could use technically the Faust or the Shapt. Okay, so the dispensary is already taken up, so let's go down to the Foundry. And you know what? For all my thinking, I actually don't think I have what it takes to get an Amethyst Ampule made. Okay, let's think about this for a minute. So this is a key. You know what a funny thing? Okay, I was just thinking about this. I should be. I had an idea related to the Hush House key, but it's not relevant right now. Okay, so one of the challenges I run into, it's all well and good for me to say I want to make an Amethyst Ampule, or a Doran Wall might work. Okay, well, as a start, let's take that. So Doran Wall with a Shapt, and that makes a secret threshold, so that doesn't help us. Glass blowing and vessel crafting. Surely that gives me the Amethyst Ampule. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that gives me a start. Now, I mean, one option I have would be to say, well, you know, we don't know. I definitely am not going to know the answer to what's on the other side of this until sort of the day turns over. One option I have would be to actually catalog 2 books using the Faust and Shapt overnight. How brave am I feeling? Pretty brave, actually. Let's do that. That's also something I can, or hang on, I don't know if I can do that overnight, so let's split the difference. I'll definitely do this with the Faust. Catalog a solar period book. I'm pretty sure it's like 10 seconds. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's solar Gothic period, roughly between the 1000s and 1500s. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. There is a fairly strong... Okay, it's 30 seconds. There is a fairly strong chance that I'll be afflicted, but... Alright, let's see... Well, we'll wait the 20 seconds before I decide on something to keep overnight. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done, and so am I, but I've earned my pay. And in 3 seconds, we'll see what the memory is. And intuition. It's kind of interesting from the insects and nectar's perspective, but not a lot for me to work on. Okay. So the skill is now level 2, its power aspects have also increased. Oops. Okay, so overnight, let's rest on... I've either got the satisfaction or the intuition. Now, oddly enough, I actually think the satisfaction makes a little more sense to keep because of the quenchings and quellings here. And then let's use Ambrose's desk with one of these... texts. Again, I may be opening myself up for a bit of sadness, but this book was probably written around the time of Hush House's solar Gothic period, roughly between the 1000s and 1500s. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. Alright, and now I have an idea of this book's nature and its content. So it was afflicted, or cursed, or in this case, it's infested. Bloodlines. If I open this book at the right page, I'll find words that slowly ooze blood. Over time, those words increase in number. This infestation can affect your Arab and core and spread to nearby objects. You can remove it with a skill that's effective against infestations and at least 7 moth. I have a lot to fix. Actually, come to think of it, instead of the soaks, it might have been a good idea for me to try and use the heart to remove some of the various curses, but a bit late to do anything about that now. With keeper level heart, the soaks are a precursor to January Sanguinary. So we do actually already have some soaks sitting up here. I've got more sand than I really know what to do with. So then I'll be able to get rid of one of these before too long. Alright, and a driftwood fragment. Long ago, there was a forest between the waves of Brankrug Bay. This driftwood is not nearly that old, but it shared salt with its lost forerunners. I'm trying to remember where I was keeping the wood, probably up here. We're starting to run out of space. All right. Yeah, overall I think we're doing all right. If I can dodge a curse, that's ideal. But if I only wind up with one, that's not too bad either. Amethyst Ampule. It has its uses, but none of them are simple and few are safe. Were it released from the glass, it would be quite another color. Alright. So my shaft is safe, and we have the Black Book of Brittany, a volume of inklore gifted St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman Conquest. So this is a tricky one. This is a 12 moon, so it's not one we're likely to be able to read anytime soon, but I'm actually running out of space now. So I'm going to try and see, let's try and shift over Inam Kapinglingpur, and then move the Kukabit prisoner. Well, I don't have to move those over, I guess I just add book here. Okay, so I am going to want to have a think about how I'm handling those, but we're probably going to take care of the memories first. And I think there's a good reason to invite Denzel tomorrow. A little water splashes on the stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. So this is my reserve water that I used. I'm kind of happy that I managed to get that drawn up. Okay, memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. So let's start by inviting Denzel. I'm always welcome at Denzel's Spiffy. And you know what, so I can see some sense in using the health for other things, but I'm actually going to use it for manual labor for today as well. So there's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. Okay. So the question is, how aggressively do I want to pursue? Well, okay, so one thing I can do here is we can take the whist with quenchings and quellings. So if I toss out the sand, oops, like so, renounce. If I cast an object into the sea, it will be lost, perhaps irretrievably. Use this to dispose of junk or of danger. So that will get me my quenchings and quellings. I think it's also fair to say that insects and nectars is going to be level 4, so we can move desires and dissolutions down. That one up there. Yeah, that's a good basic start. I can't see a situation where I need to use the metal in anything, so we will catalog yet another book. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's Solar Gothic period, roughly between the 1000s and 1500s. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. Now, if I want, I can also use the whist... I could use the core with quenchings and quellings. I'm not using the core just because that will give me other... That has other uses, such as gardening. Of course, the health also could be used for insects and nectars, so... there's that. Not sure about Lockworks and Clockworks or Edict's Liminal yet. I think we're going to wait to see what the day brings. But let's say the Arab is free. Huh. So going to say I'm reluctant to use these ones because they can be used to level up these skills. Technically, the core can be used with quenchings and quellings, and I did say that it had other uses such as, you know, drawing up water or gardening and such. Mind you, the whist has kind of already handled quenchings and quellings, but yeah, this is I think this is an ordering I'm reasonably comfortable with right now. The big question at the moment is, which of these do I want to use to read certain books? Okay, so the rain helps me out with insects and nectars. So here's what I'm thinking on this one. We've got 2 in insects and nectars already. That's really not that hard for me to generate. So we generate the 2 for insects and nectars and bring that up to 3. After that, we will use the rain to push that up to 4. So with that in mind, the salt is something... Yeah, there's no situation where somebody replaces the salt. So I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. What's your story? Right, this is the Fusine pile. Okay, so... the tricky part here is I don't know if I have a second source of moon or no, I do, confounding parables. You know, confounding parables is helpful in a couple of ways. So is contradictions, actually, but... okay, so let's go to the Vagabond desk in this case. And I'll start by reading a confounding parable. It'd be really nice to add a contradiction here. But I think I want to see what Denzel winds up giving me first. So this is sufficient for me to get the ball rolling on leveling up insects and nectars, and we can save the rest for later. Alright, Denzel rarely works for free, but he won't take payment for helping a friend. Speak to Denzel, he might even reply. Next up, an offer from Oriflammes. Oriflammes, established 1776, Sense Sign Sciences. Dear librarian, we would like to offer you this opportunity to purchase the Book of Cinders. Ostensibly an 18th century fireworks manual, but with some exotic ingredient choices and a substantial section on tephromancy, divination from ashes. This gives me pyroglyphics, which we already have some levels for, but honestly, the more skills, the more books, the better, and it only costs 2 spintria. Coquille also gets me Vac, was it? I think it was. So I do kind of want to add her where I can. Okay, memory loss. So in 10 seconds we'll have what we need to level up Quenchings and Quellings. I'm actually a bit surprised at how quickly we're able to get everything leveled up. I'm happy about that, but... Alright, I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. So, there's Quenchings and Quellings, loss, satisfaction, Quenchings and Quellings, add the whist. I am no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Improve the skill to level 3. I think what I'm also going to do with the Sweet Bones today is I'm going to take that 6 that I earn, and I'm actually going to bring back both health cards. Now, I may still cycle through one of the health to earn some money, although I may prefer to switch that to Fost at a certain point, because Edicts Liminal and Lockworks and Clockworks are both sort of spoken for. Yeah, there's actually some fairly good arguments to do that, but anyways, I'll leave that aside. But yeah, in this case, I think sort of losing a step in terms of the money generation is worth it, just to have more actions to take. Because in addition, so there's a lot on my plate in terms of things to do, but in terms of overall actions that I can take, there's quite a bit that's been opened up for me that I think is worth pursuing. So if we think about it, we've got, first of all, we have the various books and documents and such, so Admonitory Automata Project. Everything in this section I've sort of said is a reasonable candidate for me to sort of read and get something out of. And then in terms of the various rooms, it's not that hard for me to do something like the Veiled Chamber, the Weird Cursed Spire. The other thing too, of course, is I can make more Solomon's Preparation. We've got plenty of Blue Crown sitting around. And so with that in mind, I can bring Mr. Kill in. We can get him to open up a few rooms as well. So in the there's a simple level of room exploration that we can do that I haven't taken advantage of yet. On top of that, I can also take some time and see if I can maybe dedicate myself towards some of the higher level crafting. So in this case with Edicts Martial, we're already halfway. The thing that's really useful about Edicts Martial, and I know I keep complaining, I really don't like the idea of there being good or bad skills in Book of Hours, because there are other ways of getting this. But one thing that does make Edicts Martial very useful is that with 10 Moon you can get a Wormwood Dream, and a Wormwood Dream produces both Winter and Edge, I believe. So, but the 6 Winter is very powerful, especially if you think about it, right? Between Solomon's Preparation, which is a pretty straightforward item to create, and the Wormwood Dream, that's 10 Winter to work with. So even if you didn't have someone like Mr. Kill, that gets you the Veiled Chamber between those 2 items. So that's one thing that makes Edicts Martial quite useful. Now again, we're not at the point where 10 is not easy for us here, but if you kind of take a look at what we can put together, I think we've got the Nocturnary now. So if you just sort of look at what's available, right? So if we just take the Tryst, the Edicts Martial, we're already up to 6. And then under substance and shadow, right, there's lots of little things that we can do to add in. So for instance, we take the old wound, well, all of a sudden now we're up to 8. If I add, a confounding parable or an impulse, now I have a really powerful memory. And that memory is something that I can use to read a book. That's something that I can use to, it's something that I can use to open up other rooms. And this, I'm only using Edicts Martial as a simple example, but there's lots of other different things that I can make. Another good example of this would be I could use the Pale Mommet or the Flushed Mommet. These I could actually use in the slot at the desk, right, as a tool. So this is another way of getting access to books that I haven't read yet. There's really no reason for these to be sitting unread the level that they are. It's just I have all these other things that I can do without needing to read those books. So if I happen to choose that path, right, taking some time, focusing my attention on crafting, not waiting until they're up to high levels so that it's trivial to wind up making something like a Wormwood Dream, but specifically taking the effort to put the... Sorry, I just lost my coaster. Specifically taking the effort to make the things that will help kind of be a stepping stone towards more difficult or more powerful books. Those are definitely worth taking the time on. It's just a question in terms of when I want to take that time. If you'll excuse me, I'm just going to take a second here to get my coaster back. Otherwise, I'm probably going to regret it. All right. My coffee's almost warm. So, with all of that planning, we do still need to wait for all of our books to finish, though. So there's not I don't have a huge amount of urgency in terms of getting the stuff read quite yet. I still need to wait for the reading to finish. All right, this is The Alloy of the White Rose, an account by Mistress Whiteflower of the alchemical techniques favored by the House of York, also identified with the Dawn Road. These techniques failed to bring them victory in the War of the Roads, but they are not to be discounted. So, if the light in the inkwell is here, it would be a little weird for me to... Should probably put that beside the Ascendant. Although technically the Ascendant counts more as like a 9 edge. Alright, how am I going to make this work? I'm not. I'm just going to put this on this shelf. And this one. Message received. I need to read more books. Also true in real life. This is completely... I don't know how many of you are going to find this useful or not, but I am reading Foundation for the very first time. I'm having a great time with that book. I don't yet have the other two, so from my understanding, the original short stories were compiled into three books. But I've got a coworker who absolutely loves Dune. Like, the movie. I don't think he's read the book yet, but like, just utterly fascinated by it. I'm really, really charmed by his enthusiasm for the book. And I've read the first Dune, but I haven't... It's been a while, and I have more books in the series, and I haven't seen the films yet. I've seen the David Lynch one, but I don't think anybody involved with that really wants to. It's probably not as bad as he I know he didn't like it, but it has its charms in its own way. Anyways, I decided that I wanted to read... well, in general, I just kind of wanted to appreciate the development of science fiction. So I thought that I would read Foundation before Dune, so I could understand or appreciate some context. And it's one of these ones, right, where you sometimes hear reputations. You can think that's a little bit like this game in a certain sense, right? If you're not really plugged into this type of game, it can seem very weird that people like it. And of course, we live at a time where people really do want to tell you what shows you should watch, and they're really insistent about it. But I'm very, very pleasantly surprised by Foundation. It reminds me why I should be reading more fiction. Anyway, sorry, as soon as I said read more books, I'm like, yeah, I should be reading Foundation after this. Totally unrelated to the game. Sorry, I know sometimes I do those digressions, but it was worth it in this case. And if you haven't read it, definitely check it out. All right, the skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. Quenchings and quellings, arts which quench fires and bring solace to the troubled mind. A true adept is never troubled by fire, nor by fever, nor by restless spirit. Ambrose Westcott. Okay, so I think I'm just going to wait a couple seconds for the Insects and Nectars books. The real question comes down to how much do I want to wait on Denzel to get me what I need. It is spring, and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilkered heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. Right, To a Pale Lady, a collection of Franklin Bancroft's letters to Ava DeWolf. There is some substantial body of erotic pleading and half-finished poetry, but also learned excursions on matters mythical and marine, as well as notes towards a comic opera on which Franklin and Ava were apparently collaborating. Do not return, O my light, to the sea. None of us can be what we were. That is history's curse. None of us know what we may be. That is history's gift. Your mothers and the mothers of your mothers are caught in eternity's jaws like a robe hem in a trap. It is the pearl that shines, but the tide that returns. It is written, Musgrave, fourth of the DeWolf line, writes tentatively about the Covenant of Bragkrug and the legacy of the sacred inks he calls Incasta Potentialia. As the light passeth through a prism into many colors, so the great ink separateth into the lesser inks, and the lesser inks into inks minor. Musgrave coyly refuses to talk of the great inks, or else refuses to admit he doesn't know much about them. He insists that Ugol and Stargol, which can be mixed with sufficient nectar or sky aspect, are sufficient for most befitting purposes. Okay, so this had the potential of going into Lockworks and Clockworks. It still kind of does, actually. Let's see what Denzel gives me in a minute, actually. Because I have been looking for an excuse to add Coquille to the book. Well, nuts. He does a lot with silence, this man. Alright, you know what? I'm going to break and do it. So, if we take Lockworks and Clockworks, Lesson, Confounding Parable, Occult Scrap, there goes one of the Shapt. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either, so I can read the Confounding Parable again. In this case, we can use, I guess, one of the... No, I don't need to do that. I can use one of the... No, I'll use the Faust, because the Faust... I would have used that with the Lockworks and Clockworks. I probably should have used the Faust with that one, actually, but anyways. Not the end of the world. So, if I take the Faust here, we'll read Letters from a Fugitive. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And then I will take whatever desk. I guess we'll go back to Natan's desk, seeing as that's where I sit. Add Coquille's card for what you might call an occult correspondence. And we will invite her back so I can get a language lesson. But will they come when you do call for them? Secret histories are layered beneath the one we know, like notes in a rare wine. The librarian knows this well. In fact, because I've got a spare ink, I wonder... 5 Grail. That's a little harder than it looks. Maybe. Actually, this is harder than I... Yeah, okay. So I was thinking one of the options that I would have would be something like this. But in order to write the invitation, I need an ink. Huh. I forgot that Catwink has Grail. Alright. I'll take it. I have enough here to craft a letter inviting Coquille to Brandkrug. Now, we won't do the language lesson until the end of the day. That's not a problem. Obviously, it'd be nice to use the Tryst to make another Catwink, but we'll wait on that too. No reason not to send that out to... send that in the post right now, though. So, stamp, envelope, send. And yes, it is back. So, of course, what's nice about that is we'll use that to fill in... I believe we use that with Nyctodromy. So that's going to get me another element of the soul. It doesn't get me access to Nyctodromy because I've got a gap there, but honestly, any language at this point is welcome. The skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. And we've got Hindsight, so that would have been nice for Quenchings and Quellings, but not urgent. I guess if I want to try something nice and scaly, I can work with that, but better now. And again, I'm probably going to need to decide what I want to do with all of these elements of the soul and such, but I do like the idea of getting both health back, just as a precaution. Letters from a Fugitive. Lars Westergren, explorer and murderer, spent 7 years escaping justice through his knowledge of byways and shortcuts in the bounds. Throughout that time, he wrote regularly to his daughter, possibly in part to taunt his pursuers. A year with the Legion de Sul, patrolling the bounds until he deserts. A month in the Priory of Captains in Moribund. 7 days, or so he claims, in Ys behind the wave. Cornered at last by his pursuers, Westergren writes that he will attempt the paths of the sun. He doesn't seem sanguine about his chances, and indeed this is his last letter. An editor's note adds that Westergren's whereabouts or end remain unknown, although he was supposedly sighted at the Christmas market in Vienna, the negotiations between invisible underworld figures that happen each year there in 1929. Alright, so I think this one will just turn into... We'll turn into a level for insects and nectars. We do want to move on with our goals. And then we'll take stock. So I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. So keep talking with Denzel. So I think I'm going to leave it here. Obviously, we're only halfway through the day, but I'm trying to keep I'm trying to keep these videos within time, and then second of all, I do still have sort of the laundry and other things to do, so it's not terrible to wrap it up here. But let's think about the resources that I currently have, and then what I kind of need to have happen by the end of the day. So to level up insects and nectars, ideally, I would have 2 moon or nectar. Realistically, though, I would be using the moon in this case. Now, I think maybe one way of thinking about this would be, so we've got insects and nectars and edicts liminal. So both of these technically could use the Tryst. Weirdly enough, so I was originally thinking I'd use the health for maybe gardening or something like that, but Tryst is useful to me in order to write letters. So if I take the health down here, and I think I'm going to have to... yeah, okay. So here's how I'm going to do this. We'll use the health for insects and nectars, and we'll use the shaft for edicts liminal. So that frees me up. That's got... so now I've got Tryst and Core to work with. So the real question on these would be, what do I realistically need to have happen? So in this case, I would need 2 memories to level up insects and nectars. We'll apply the rain. I, of course, have the option of using the old wound, but let's leave that aside for now. And then for Edicts Liminal, it's actually the same story. I would need 2 memories to move that up. I should also move Lockworks and Clockworks to its appropriate place. And before too long, Edicts Liminal will be joining it, so we'll put you up here. Okay. So I suppose the one drawback right now is that, so for Edict's Liminal I need the Knock and the Moth. For Insects and Nectars I need the Moon or the... I need the Moon or the Nectar. But it's not immediately clear to me... it's not immediately clear to me how many of these we're actually going to need to generate. So I could take the core and I could take the Tryst and say, all right, all of this is going into memories, and that effectively sort of nullifies Denzil and we just move on. That doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense because, again, the core, the Tryst, technically even the health, but all of these are things that can be used to generate other useful things for me. So the one thing I am going to do is I'm going to go to Ava's desk and I'm going to read another one of the Salt texts. So this time we'll do the Crossing to Noon. So the reason I'm doing that is Salt gives me Moon and Knock, so that's useful for both of these two, right? So anything that can't be generated by Denzil and gives me Moon or Nectar and Knock or Moth. Right? So it's a slightly more complicated statement that I'm working here, right? So I've got the ores on the inside, and then those are being combined by an and. So in this case, like the Foresight, well, Denzil can make that. Satisfaction, Denzil can make that. Fears, we know that Denzil can make that. Same with Impulses. Intuitions, Hindsight, Regrets. Confounding Parable seems like it would be something that would be useful, right? That gets me the Moon, but it doesn't get me something relevant to Edict's Liminal. Revelations we already have. Patterns, again, it's helpful for the Edict's Liminal, but not immediately applicable to the other, to Insects and Nectars. Contradictions, again, gives me a Moon, so I could use it with Insects and Nectars, but not helpful for Edict's Liminal. Gossip, Mr. Kill, Denzil can generate it. Same with Storms. Bittersweet Certainty has Winter. Beguiling Melodies has Grail and Sky. So yeah, in each of these cases, they're just not something that I can... that meets those two requirements. So in this case, I was willing to give up the core because I knew that the Salt, it didn't matter. I could get just blindly lucky with Denzil, and we would still have use for that Salt. I guess if he just cranks out all the memories that we need in a row, then that's technically wasted, but that's a big assumption, let's say. Okay, it also, I didn't realize it at the time, but we actually, this is, I believe, the first playthrough where I've had all the colored books. So we've got White Book of Brittany here. We've got the Red Book of Brittany, but I believe we also got the Black Book. I haven't read it already, have I? Oh, here it is. Feels wrong not to have them beside each other. Wait, is the White Book that much easier to read? Huh. I did not know that. Anyways, yeah, so it's the first time I've had all three books. I don't know if that signals anything, but it's just a nice little detail. All right, I'm now 10 minutes over babbling, so thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one, although there may be a gap for me between breaking them, or between recording them, so apologies if I'm a little confused as to my next steps. Until then, take care.